Hello and welcome to Running Your Stories. I'm here today with James Penson, a good friend of mine who's got more experience than I have with running ultras, and I'm preparing in a few days to take on the Lakeland 100, and I'd like to record what my theory is with the training I've been doing, how prepared I think I am before I go and do it, because I think after the event it's very easy to have different ideas about what you thought would work and what you thought wouldn't work. So I'm going to have a go at recording beforehand what I think's going to work, what I think's going to be different to my other events, and then we'll put it to the test on Friday through into Saturday, maybe into Sunday, depending on how things go, and see from there. So thank you, James, for coming along to make this not just a monologue, which
No problem.
Which I think wouldn't be the best. So as I was saying, I'll have an idea about how I want to try and explain my thinking, and what I'd really like you to do is jump in with questions at any time. Anything that's not clear, doesn't make sense, you think, why would you do that? That's really what I asked you along for.
Okay.
So this will be my third 100-mile race. I've done 2 spine challenges, winter events, and improved my time by 10 hours between the first one and the second one. So I think I'm on a journey of learning, developing my running, learning about the sport. And I've tried to move on again significantly. And my theory behind that really is about trying to identify what the limiting factors have been. You know, what stopped me producing a better performance. And I'm not somebody who's all out concerned on performance. I do like to have a chat along the way, although I didn't have many chats in January because the weather was so bad, which was probably in some ways the most disappointing thing about that race.
Did you do most of it with somebody?
No, almost completely on my own. I probably spent an hour in the whole thing talking to people.
That's good. Well, relatively good. I mean, it might have helped you, it might not. You never know. Sometimes with someone you go too quick, but if you're with someone you know can slow you down a little bit.
Absolutely. So I've been trying to think about how to structure my thoughts about health and fitness, because my thinking about ultra running is that because of the distances involved and because I really enjoy it and I want to keep doing it for as long as possible, for me it's all about being as healthy as possible, like total health, and that's going to allow me to keep developing as a runner and allow me to keep running into the future, not just kind of go all out, smash my body up and burn out. And so I've organised my thoughts into movement, I'll call it, the sort of the physical side, mind, the mental side, and nutrition. And it's undoubtedly the influence of my mentor on the mind side, Javed Bhatti, that there's 3 elements here and not another number, which might come up as we go through things. So I think one of the things that people might notice from that, if we're talking about mind, movement and nutrition, is that rest or sleep is not an item on its own. And my thinking about that is that rest is a lack of activity in many ways, or very, very low stress activity, whether that be physical, mental or nutrition. And so if we start on the kind of the physical, you then have on the movement, you can have recovery movement or rest. So you can go to bed, you can sleep, you can put your feet up, you can go for a walk. Now for me, the level of fitness I'm at, I see anything up to a 1-hour walk is not even counting as being any level of stress. Now obviously for some people a 1-hour walk could be very stressful. Other people it'd be kind of low stress. It's making them work. And then low stress for me is running at a low heart rate, and I sort of follow there's a guy in the States, Dr. Maffetone, who's defined what he calls the MAF heart rate, which is 180 minus your age. The theory behind it being that's your it's your maximum fat burning, and it's also the point at which you stimulate your muscles enough to get them to react and develop and adapt to the stress, but with the least amount of damage to the tissues. Because as you go into higher stress movement, you're going to start causing damage that you need to recover from. And so the majority of my running over the past few months has been at this low stress, and I define that by heart rate because it's a bit hilly around here.
So just below that?
Yes. Yeah. So
not well below it, or just within it.
It's and you are better off being well below it rather than a tiny bit above it. It's a little bit like the overtrain undertrain thing. You're better off undertraining by 10% rather than overtraining by 1%. It's the same kind of idea there, that if you could do it perfectly, you would never go above that number. Now, as you get fitter, you can put modifiers on there, and it's all written out on the web. There's quite a reasonably simple web page about it, which I like. I like simple. Don't like getting too complicated, because there's too many things to consider in life. And so for me, it's 180 minus my age, that's 138. But I don't panic if I'm going up to sort of 140 now that I've been running for a few years. I've got a good level of base cardio fitness, because as that increases, you can go a little higher. And again, in biology, it's not like you go a tiny bit over and suddenly you've lost your whole training. It just hasn't been as good a training session as it would have been if you'd stayed below that, because you've introduced more stress, therefore you're going to need more recovery. And then the high stress, which is things like, for example, the That's So Hebden Bridge Fell Race, for example. Nice little, was that a 6 miler? Run pretty much as hard as you can for an hour. And that's high stress. That does some damage, but the principle is to keep that definitely below 20% of the training. Preferably, I've actually been lower than that at times. 10 to 20% of my training's been the high stress stuff. That's allowed me then to really push on and increase the volume of training that I've been doing, because when I looked at each of my sort of previous sort of big races, I've tried to increase volume up to the level where I can without getting injured, and that keeps increasing because I keep getting fitter, but again, by making it specifically low stress. And the key, I think, really for a lot of people is to just don't be in between the two. That area in between, you're neither getting the low stress workout, which is helping you develop without doing damage, and you're not also getting the really high stress. It's kind of bad for your muscles, but really good for your heart and lungs. And so you want to just ideally do one or the other, and that's what I've been trying to practice.
Are there any arguments against that theory at all that you've come across?
I haven't seen many. I don't know if you've seen any.
No, I'm just wondering if there was any, normally with
absolutely, and I do look for counter arguments to things, very much. I think one of the biggest things with that is people fall into traps of like always wanting to go faster than the last did on Strava and that kind of thing, and going along to a club run where you're with your mates and they're just going a bit faster than you want to. It's difficult to be disciplined to put on the heart rate monitor and look at the heart rate and walk up a hill when I'm doing those heart rate centric runs. And then as I've got more and more used to it, I've done more runs where I might have the heart rate monitor on, but I haven't looked at it during the run. The interesting thing there is when I look back on the data, I actually run and keep my heart rate slightly lower.
So just run by feel.
Running by feel, when I'm kind of really focused on it, than what I do when I'm looking at the heart rate. Sometimes it's more that looking at it means that when I'm going downhill, for example, I can run pretty fast downhill before my heart rate comes up. And I'm sure faster than I would in a race, because you're potentially going to hurt yourself sort of speed before your heart rate actually goes up on the downhills. So yeah, that's been the kind of the physical side, and then making sure, of course, that you get enough rest. And so I don't run every day. I have had some weeks where, because there's been little events on social runs and things like that, I might have gone 10 days in a row of running and things like that. But again, I've been very careful that actually the majority of those days have been low stress. And so I walk 2 to 3 times a day for active recovery, 20 minutes before work, and unless I'm going to the gym or running. And that's, again, what I think is the key, and mentioned beforehand, where I get a lot of my information from. There's a podcast called Primal Blueprint, which is really good. And just I've had this theory since I started trying to get myself fit, of little and often works best for me, and that was just a personal thing. But again, heard about it recently from people that have done the research, that your body isn't made to sit at a desk for 8 hours. If you can break that up with even 10 minutes of walking in the middle of the day, just getting everything moving, and if you go and do a half marathon or a marathon, and then you just sit and put your feet up and do absolutely nothing for the next few days, any toxins and things that are there will just sit in your muscles, and actually your muscles recover more slowly than if you just got up and went for a gentle walk. But it's that key of, you don't want to inflict more damage because you're damaged. And so to try and stick to that, for the first time ever, I've had a written training plan.
Did you not have one for the spine, or did you just kind of loosely pencil?
It was always loosely that I've done before. I've got a great book. I think all ultra runners have Relentless Forward Progress. I think it's the classic book, and in there that they tell you how to build your training plan and have example training plans. And I read that a year and a half, 2 years ago, and kind of followed the principles in there all the time, of trying to build up to big weeks. I go, whether it's 2 or 3 weeks on and then back off a bit. All those principles are there and they're really sound. But what I've usually found is that either I've had work trips that get in the way, or I've signed up to another small race that kind of gets in the way. This time I've actually kind of put a lot of things aside and been really disciplined and stuck really closely to it. Even
that 24-hour thing you did the other day?
Well, that 24-hour thing was interesting, because I didn't do the 24-hour race. I went to support, and I did exactly the mileage I should do between the Saturday and the Sunday, although some of it was through the middle of the night, which isn't exactly what I'd write on a plan. However, it's really good training to do some running through the night before you go and do an event that's going to take 30 hours.
Yeah. What time did the spine challenge set off? Was that in the morning?
Yeah, that was 9 o'clock we set off on the MRT.
So this
challenge.
one's going to set off at 6 at night.
Yes.
For like 100. So have you planned for that, or have you kind of how tired do you expect to be?
I've planned for it in the sense that actually that supporting on that 24-hour event was one of the best bits of training for that, because I turned up at that event at about 7 p.m. because I'd been out with the kids all day. Now I turned up a bit tired because I'd been stood at the side of a football pitch all day long, 2 sons at football tournaments. But then I start on at a similar kind of time of the day, and then running through the night, although with sort of more gaps and breaks. But again, that meant that I wasn't then stressing my body too much, because it was run a few miles, between 3 and 6 miles. I think probably 12 is the most I did in one go before having a rest.
And have you broken it all down into each segment? Have you got times that have you got kind of, or are you just thinking, no, I'm just going to keep my heart rate at this, below this rate? And
that's my plan, really. I mean, I will before Friday night have a look at a few of, probably no more than 4 of the like aid stations, and sort of say, right, if I'm at this time here, that means I'm on for that sort of time of finish.
Yeah.
But what I find for myself on long events, and I've heard other people say this, the maths that I can do in my head just completely falls apart. And the more I try to do it, and the more I think I've sort of been clever with it, the worse I am. And I'll spend ages trying to work things out, only to realise later that I've worked them out wrong. And I'm kind of coming to the realisation of
that you're not very good at maths.
I'm fine when I haven't been running for 20 hours, but just come to the realisation that actually it starts to become stressful, and I don't want to stress myself about it.
Yeah.
Because again, and this now I guess segues nicely into talking about mind, which is another key element. And so again, I look at mind as being rest, which is sleep, and also rest for the mind is meditation. Now, I don't practice formal meditation myself, but I would say that on long runs I do get into a meditative state.
Yeah, I think it's hard not to.
Yeah. And I think that's the way I meditate. Not with listening to somebody talking me through it or music or something like that. I just go out into the greenery outside, and it's actually one of the reasons why nobody's really asked me this before, but I do run a lot of similar routes when I'm doing especially my long runs, and it's simply because if I go and run a route that I know, I can just switch my mind off, and I go more into that sort of meditative state than if I'm trying to route find all the time and having to be on and thinking about things, and so yeah, I now have a kind of library of routes, because it's the first time I've been trying to follow a plan of doing 10 miles on this day and do 5 miles on that day. I started naming all my routes in a way that I can know, that's basically, I could have named them more simply of that's a road loop that's 8 miles, and that's a road loop that's 5 miles, and that's a trail loop that's but I came up with slightly more interesting names. I tried to, but at least I know then, okay, today it's the same kind of run that I did 3 weeks ago. I can just look that one up on Strava. That was the route. But I do make mistakes. I think, I'm off down this road, and then find myself on another road because I've slipped into that state.
Easily done.
But it's that's training runs. So yeah, and then I think again what a lot of people suffer with, and I certainly suffered with a lot in the past, is mental high stress. Because I think in the same way of the physical side, where you want your high stress, which can be used to train your mind. We talk about getting out your comfort zone, and if you're scared of heights, go and do an abseil or something like that. That's the kind of high stress training you can do to develop your mind, and I think that's really good for you. But at the same time, we often get high stress from our jobs, from our work, and that's a little bit like those fast runs with your mates, where you're kind of doing harm to yourself, but you're not getting the benefit of developing at the same time. And this is why I've actually the only area in all of this that I've had a coach is actually on the mind side, and funnily enough, not specifically to develop being less stressed, but what I've been working with Javid on is just a simple but structured way of thinking. It's almost problem solving, it's resilience, it's mindfulness, and it's just kind of developed a mindset that I can approach any problem with without getting stressed about it. I'm not perfect, I'm still human, I get stressed, but so much less than I used to. And for me, that's actually the key thing that I kind of fell in love with ultra running with, is the fact that I've suffered with anxiety and had anxiety all my life, and if I go and try and do a fast run, which for me is going to try and do a PB at park run, something like that, I can be pretty stressed on that start line and put a lot of pressure on myself, and you're far more tired afterwards, and I don't enjoy it. Whereas if you're going to go and run 100 miles, I find anyway that you've got to be as relaxed as possible on that start line. You don't want to waste any energy stressing about anything.
That's what I was saying earlier about having family around. Sometimes if you don't have any of that, any of those distractions, it allows you to be selfish, which you do need to be.
Yes.
With quite a lot of these things. So yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I've tried to kind of develop a set of tools on mindset, which is kind of coincidentally helped to lower stress, but at the same time going through the coaching process, basically what I pay for in a coach is to stress me in a constructive way to develop my mind. And so it's that mind training, and it's been coming on massive. It was one of the reasons why I was able to take 10 hours off my Challenger time, was because when things started going wrong, which they always will in a 100-mile race, something will go wrong. Just the way I approached each problem, it just shifted fundamentally.
What went wrong?
The major thing that went wrong was quite a bad sprain on my ankle. That was fairly serious. I couldn't really walk.
Yeah.
I was in that much pain that when I finished, I refused to walk for the next 2 days because it was that painful. But I ran about at least 30 miles with that level of pain, because the mindset is then, well, okay, just look at the pain like it's a data stream. It's information that's coming to you. It doesn't mean you ignore it. It's not about blocking it out, but it's about assessing it for what it is and making decisions about it. And so if you got that kind of you got a pain signal coming in, and earlier in the race I'd had my left IT band had gone really tight, and that's quite painful. And so I was thinking about that and thinking, okay, I know I can stop and stretch that out, and actually the pain will probably go. But the weather was really horrendous. I'm thinking, well, do I want to stop? Versus the weather versus the pain. And then I thought, well, the other thing I could do is just try landing my foot differently and pushing the weight left, push the weight right. And I went around this kind of sequence of things there with the IT band, and by the time I'd gone around the sequence, it stopped hurting. And it's just because obviously it's pulled the muscles in just slightly different ways, but it's also relaxed the mind.
Because you're focusing on something else.
Yeah, rather than getting hung up on this thing's being done to me, I can't do anything about it, it's taken over you. It's like, well, hold on, I'm making logical decisions about this. It just kind of puts you in charge of it. And then with the sprained ankle, I went through the same process, and I found by loading it differently that actually I could lock the muscles on my ankle, spring off my Achilles when I was going downhill, and I could actually run fast downhill. And it didn't hurt at the time, but would hurt more once I got down the hill and had to start sort of hobbling again. But it was getting me through the race, and it was giving me some element of feeling in control. And it's that kind of change of mindset versus on my first Challenger, where both my ankles swelled up because I hadn't been anywhere near the volume of training required to go and do a 100-mile race.
Are you wearing boots or trainers for that?
Trainers,
yeah. For both?
Yeah. Yeah, but both ankles really swelled up. They were very, very painful on that first Challenger, and it just got more and more on top of me, and I just got like angry and forced my way to the finish.
You're lighter now as well, and your pack's going to be lighter, like you said as well.
Yeah.
So that should.
Yeah.
And just the general training for
2
years now.
Yeah.
Since then.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Like I say, it's the difference in mindset and how I've reacted to the kind of injuries coming on is just vastly different. But yeah, well, as you say, that was, just pushing my body to a stress level way beyond what had been before, and it just reacted and swelled up. So one of the things I've been learning about since then is, now switching over to nutrition, is eating a diet that induces less swelling in my body, because that's what I've been learning, and I am very much still learning about this, in that, you know, certain things you eat cause all kinds of swelling to go on in your body, and then if you put on top of that high stress movement and a high stress mindset, which that's exactly what I had in that first challenge. I had all three being high stress. It's not a surprise that my ankles swelled up like balloons, you know, because everything I was basically throwing loads of sugar into my body, which is
during or before. Both, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's, you know, it was all sugar and grains mainly, which are both very high stress foods. I say I got my mindset into a very high stress state, and because of the distance I was covering, although the speed was low, the distance made it a high stress physical activity. So you put all that stress together, and at some point your body says help, and your swells up. It reacts to it. Your immune system kicks in. It starts, you know, it's just trying to protect itself, so it puts fluid around stuff to try and protect it. And so in order to really help recover faster, because the faster you can recover, the more you can then stress your body, and because it's the recovery that develops you, I've then been looking into the nutrition side. And so again, applying this rest, low stress, high stress onto nutrition, the way I'm breaking this down is the rest side of nutrition. Of course, you go to sleep, you stop eating. But then when you start extending that out into fasting, or time restricted eating, as I prefer to call it, which is a term from Dr. Panda, who's got a fantastic name, Sachin Panda. What a great name. He's one of the world's leading experts on circadian rhythm. Really, circadian rhythm, you know how your body reacts to daylight. And yeah. But this is what you're here for, because I'll say stuff, and if you don't understand, ask, because other people.
Like tantric? Is that one?
I've not got into tantric stuff, so I can't answer your question. But yeah, the principle being that in the same way to what we've been talking about with physical exercise and with mindset, you need to give your digestion a rest. And when they've been doing medical studies on this, other processes start to kick in your body once that rest gets long enough, that don't kick in beforehand, or very rarely, or in very small amounts. And I can't describe them all off the top of my head yet. I keep learning more, but the key points that I've picked up to focus on is, once you get over 14 hours of fasting without eating, your mitochondria start to become more efficient, and within a cell you'll get more mitochondria grown in there. And so some of my low stress, and you want to specifically be looking at low stress training run here, do a low stress training run after fasting for 14 to 15 hours. So by the time you eat, it's, you know, running up towards 16 hours of fasting, but then you've had that physical exercise in there as well. Apparently it develops your cardiovascular system much faster than just the running on its own, and in fact studies have shown that fasting alone above 14 hours increases cardiovascular fitness without any exercise. And it's when I started hearing that, I thought, I've got to have a try of this. You know, I just thought you know, that's, you can just skip breakfast and you get fitter. So, you know, it's very attractive. It's not easy to maintain, and that's something we'll come on to, which somebody's been asking me about.
What's the plan with the not eating before the race?
That's a good question, because I'd started this kind of fasting or into time restricted eating before the last Challenger, so about November last year. And there was 3 reasons why I started it. One is actually I was going to say idea, but it is medically proven that you get cardiovascular fitter by fasting. The other is that in that morning period, those extra 4 to 6 hours when you're not eating, your body isn't putting loads of blood into your digestive system, and therefore it's got more energy available to recover your muscles. And as I say, there are some other processes that start kicking in with cell regeneration and things. And then the third one is that it starts to help you get fat adapted, which as we know is a fuel source compared to carbs, where you're going to get more energy out for the weight of the fuel, and you can carry a lot more of it. I think it's about 1,500 calories of carbs you carry in your bloodstream, whereas body fat, within reason, unlimited, but having too much of it's detrimental as well. So that was the reasons why I started doing it. And then coming into the Spine Challenger, I was asking others that had done that on similar kinds of races. And by the way, there are a couple of people that have done the full spine, eating something like 100 or 200 calories a day, because they got fully fat adapted and just burnt body fat for 268 miles.
Is there any
which is going a bit far for me.
Yeah. Is there any thinking on that it could be dangerous to your heart at all?
There's a recent study which I'm partway through reading, but looks sound from what I've read so far, because the headline on the blog, which is always scary, is because if you go kind of far enough down the lines of going into eating fat instead of carbs, you go into keto, into ketosis. And so there was a study done on keto diets recently, and like I said, I've been reading the paper about it, and the headline was like busting 13 myths about keto. And one of those questions specifically was about danger to the heart, which is why I've read it recently. And the question about danger to the heart, I think, comes up because of there's been the idea around for a long time that cholesterol is bad for your heart. The problem with that is it's an oversimplification, in that there's at least 3 different kinds of cholesterol, and 2 of them are actually really, really good for your heart. And this is where nutrition gets vastly complicated. Which is why I've been slowly, over a period of years, learning enough and then making kind of step-by-step adjustments in my diet, as I've become confident that I've read enough scientific material to know I'm not going to do myself any harm. Because again, if we kind of come back to, one of the attractions is reducing inflammation. There's people who I've heard talking on podcasts and things, and when I say people, I'm talking about doctors who've gone over to carnivore diet with nicotine patches as a way to massively reduce inflammation, and because they had versions of autoimmune issues, and they want to it's not, I think suppress the immune system would be the wrong term, but suppress the overreaction of the immune system. And so you think, that's kind of good, but then for me, you're then taking out so many other foods that would bring in so much good into your system. So it took me a long time before I became convinced enough to actually look at reducing the vast majority of carbs out of my diet. So I think the time restricted eating, I think, is completely safe. I can't find anything against it anywhere. I know some people that have tried it and failed dismally, but they were on a poor quality diet beforehand. And if you're eating poor quality carbs, like sugar, for example, and then you try to go for not eating for 12, 14 hours, you're just going to have a blood sugar crash. You're going to feel awful. It's going to be really, really difficult. So there is kind of a step-by-step process of, well, you've got to improve the quality of your diet, then you can go into time-restricted eating or fasting. That makes you start to become fat adapted, then you can start to consider whether you want to take carbs, more of the carbs out of the diet. So, and the theory behind it is that if I'm running, and actually once you, if you get really fat adapted, you can actually even run at high stress, and still because you're then burning ketones, you go fully into ketosis. But the idea is to get my body adapted so it can switch fuel sources readily without me throwing up, without me feeling really nauseous, because the first spine race I did, felt terrible, stopped eating, no energy. I thought I'd got things sorted. I did the Oldham Way, like 40 miler, smashed it, fine. Then I went on to Hardmoor 60, great for like 7-8 hours, and then again just started crashing, just felt nauseous, felt awful. White Rose 60, same thing. Now through those races I was trying basically different carb delivery systems. It was basically how I would phrase it, whether I was trying Tailwind or whether I was trying solid food, or I was trying different things that different people had talked about. And then for the Spine Challenger this January, I'd started to become fat adapted. I'd say I was probably like, this is purely unscientific reckoning, but say 70% fat adapted. During the night I was getting a bit low, I ate some carbs, lifted me right up. I finished that race. If I wasn't injured, I'd have been confident I could turn around and start running home. Energy wise, I was completely fine, just because it starts to give you a much flatter level of energy. And then I'd say I'm now more like 90% fat adapted. I've taken it further, and this is one of the things I think is going to help me in this race. And I did the 50-mile training run recently and I always carry plenty of food with me because I'm still very new to this stuff. So I carry my backup carbs of Chia Charge bars, which I think if you're going to eat carbs, they are really good. And one of the things, sort of side benefits I found, is that as I've been getting fat adapted, if I'm going to go and do a short race like a fell race, if I eat some carbs,
get a boost.
It's like a turbocharger. And I just go flying around, other than on that very hot day at Easter when I was having a very bad day. But so I carry stuff like that as a backup, so it's there. But I ate a bag of nuts, and my parents met me halfway around it up at Hepton Stall with a salad that I'd prepared, which and this is where it comes into talking about some of the actual foods that I eat. So a salad, you think, well, where's the fat in that? So yeah, not much in this salad itself, but the boiled eggs, the black pudding, and loads of olive oil, that's where the fat comes from. And so that's my normal sort of lunch every day when I'm breaking my fast, is a salad with, like I say, lots of olive oil, which is a really good source of a very healthy fat. But you don't really want to just drink half a bottle of it.
No.
Which, if you read Scott Jurek's book, he has tried and it doesn't work. I'll leave it to somebody like him. So again, one of the things for me with nutrition has been about not making the whole process stressful. I would say that I've become really quite dedicated to it, and it's kind of difficult at times. What I haven't done is gone sort of what I'd call full keto. At the moment there's berries in season, bilberries especially. You know, I've got different berry plants in the garden, and I'm eating piles of berries, which if I was trying to be fully in ketosis, the carbs in those berries would pull me right out of it. But I just cannot put it into my head how it can be bad for me in any way to eat a natural wild food that is readily available at this time of the year. And that's where my diet is somewhere between primal and keto, like a paleo kind of diet. But then I eat dairy products, which isn't really paleo. So it's, you know, it's cutting my own cloth.
It's getting the balance.
It's trying to get the balance of not making things too restrictive and too difficult. Because I think if I was to cut out dairy products, I would really find it very restrictive, and that would start to stress me. And I'd be kind of walking around thinking, well, what can't I? Whereas I found it easier than I expected to cut out grains. You see, I love bread. I like cake, and I like beer. Now I have had a few beers, and one of the things I've heard as well is that it's kind of important not to cut it out absolutely completely in the long term, because otherwise you can become gluten intolerant simply because you've not eaten it. So if you do eat it in the future, you'll react to it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, that's my excuse for having a bit of birthday cake with the kids and things like that. You know, it's, you know, I don't feel I've gone crazy with it, but yeah, I've cut out all the bread, the rice, pasta, just cut it all out, and I actually find it now easier not to eat biscuits and stuff.
Yeah.
I still have a bit of dark chocolate every day, but usually it's some berries and pieces of fruit is kind of my sweet treat, which I can actually tell now when I've eaten, or more so the next day, if I've eaten too much fruit on a night, because when I'm in that sort of fasting period the next morning, I'll be hungry. If I'm that little bit stricter and only having, you know, smaller handfuls of berries, or just an apple or a banana, not an apple and a banana and a pear and a, you know, these things add up. If I start to have too much, then I start to be hungry during the fast period, because my blood sugars, you know, the insulin's being turned on. But the thing I have found, which wasn't the reason I'd made the switch, the reason is, like I said, to give me this constant fuel source, but making the switch to switching off the carbs, I've lost weight as well, and I am eating a big volume of stuff, and it is, even for me now, having read all this sort of science and stuff, it's counterintuitive that I eat piles of fat and I lose weight. You know, it's still in my head that eating fat makes you fat, which it really doesn't. Eating carbs makes you fat, which is really unfortunate, because some of those carbs are really tasty. Because again, one of the things in particular that I know causes inflammation is vegetable oils, like sunflower oil and especially rapeseed oil. And just when because all these changes I've made haven't been like a hard thing from this particular day. They've all been kind of dipping my toe in the water, reducing things down. And the last sort of time when I sat and ate like a big bag of crisps kind of thing, my legs were heavy the next day. And it's that swelling, because as things start to swell, you then end up with more water in there. They are literally heavier, and it's been really interesting process, because I've read about all this stuff, and I've read the medical studies. I'm not saying, you know, my one-time trial myself suddenly means this is true, but then just witnessing it yourself, following these what other people have been saying, because again, listening to other people like Joe Rogan on he's the most famous podcaster there is, who we all aspire to. He's an ex-MMA fighter, and he does bow hunting So he goes out with a bow into the mountains and hunts elk and things like that. So he does some endurance sport as well as his martial arts. And he was going on about, cutting out carbs and how your energy levels get really sort of just level, constant and things like that. And I'm thinking, well, it's because when he says carbs, he's talking about really low quality American bread versus, really better quality stuff that I'd bake most of my bread myself in the past and things like that. But it is all levels, in that when you go from the low quality carbs to high quality carbs, you feel so much better. Your energy's more constant. It's not so spiky up and down. And then when you go to the next level of cutting out the carbs, it just becomes really just solid. And you just, it's incredible, but it's not easy. So yeah, I've been trying it. See where I can get myself to.
So what's the kind of ultimate goal for the 100 then? Did you say sub 30?
Sub 30 I think would kind of show that I've made a shift. I think taking that chunk of time off in kind of a 6-month period would be significant. Any more time off, just becomes more and more significant. And as we were saying earlier, I'm not trying to kind of write down times and push myself really hard. It's that difficult compromise, isn't it, in these long races?
Yeah. Well, what would you be? I suppose it's what would you be happy with? What would you be disappointed with? Is finishing enough?
I think having a qualified finish has got to be the first aim in any ultra.
Do you know the percentage completion rate of people doing it?
I don't off the top of my head, but I would have thought it's 60 to 70% of that order.
65% for about the first 5 years. 65% dropout of doing it. The 100. Now it'll have gone up because there's more people going back to attempt it again and again, and more repeat people doing it. But it was about 65% dropout. Yeah. And personally, I would say it's naivety. The most people that have dropped out underestimated it, and that's the thing, which I don't think you have at all. But I definitely think a completion is good, very good for anyone. Completion to get under 30 is brilliant. I mean, you've done a lot of training. I would say get around it first and foremost, especially for the first Lake 100. Get around it. Get at least halfway, 60, 70, 80% of the way in one piece. Yeah, doing quite well, and then push. But yeah.
I mean, again, what I've seen myself, and I don't see myself as being experienced yet. I've obviously got some experience. I'm learning some lessons. Is that even on my second Challenger, when I've 10 hours faster than my first one, checkpoint 1.5, which is when this injury had sort of properly kicked in, and the medics convinced me to let them have a play with it and stick some tape on my leg and stuff. So I was in there for 40 minutes. I could have been another 40 minutes, or I could have been 30 minutes faster. I only needed to be in there for 10 minutes.
Yeah, you never know. Sometimes though, 40 minutes could have been worth its weight in gold later on in a race.
Yeah, well, as I say, in that case, I finished sort of full of energy, and other than the injury, I was in really good shape. So I'm learning about some of those things. That's the interesting thing for me with this race, is I've done a lot of work around what might be my limiters. What's going to hold me back. Before the last Challenger, the major thing was nutrition, and I think I'm on the right path with that, because I improved so much in that race, and I think I've taken it on further in the right way. So that was a major limiter. Another limiter, which was a kind of a softer one, was just the volume of training that I was able to do, which again, I've been able to up that volume. It's about 15% increase in volume of training, which is quite significant. They generally say don't go more than 10% up on what you've done before, and I've sustained 15%. And previously, when I've been training for these big races, I've overtrained and got injured, and I've sustained 15% without getting injured. So that's, again, should remove or push back another limiter. I don't suddenly become Superman. I'm not going to suddenly do a sub 24 hour, but it's pushed back another limiter. And again, the mindset kind of pushed back limiters there as well. The things that can't do anything about is weather. The minute the forecast's looking promising, and they're saying it's going to be a bit cooler and a bit wet. That's good for me.
Yeah, that is good.
Injury again, but again, injury is something that, because it's been a limiter, it slowed me down. Because in January, my plan was, because my first challenger, I went off too fast. I basically blew up after about 40 miles and then finished 110. It wasn't pretty. And so this time it was to purposely go off slower and then just pick people off all the way through. And I was doing that. And at the point when the injury really kicked in, I didn't lose any ground. So I was just as fast as the others. I've looked at like the sector times, and I was holding ground. I wasn't catching them, but if I wasn't injured, I'd have been even faster. And so again, injury is if you twist an ankle. But then what I've been doing is I've been following a good strength and conditioning program in the gym, and I went and got physio again about that injury, and it wasn't just physio on get rid of the pain, it was physio on how do I now make this stronger. So I push it back. But again, it could be that something else develops. The great thing, as I say, is through this training block, I haven't had any injuries that have cropped up and stopped me. I've had something that started coming on, a couple of things that have started coming on, but I've known enough to be able to get them under control without actually having to lose any volume off my training at all. So yeah, injury could happen. I could slip on a style and break a leg. It's just, it can take you out of the race straight away. The other thing, equipment, of course. I think a lot of people put far too much emphasis on equipment. It's massively complicated. You want to try and get it right, but for me it's more about the equipment not stopping you in any way. It's just kind of, the equipment doesn't help you finish. It's your physical, mental nutrition. That's what gets you through it. The equipment can make it a bit more pleasant. Can not form a blister on your shoulder. The things like it's that. So I'm using the same pack I used in the spine, even though I don't need as big a pack this time. But I'm familiar with it. I've done another round of modifications on it. Keep adding extra pockets to it. That's great now. It's just I'm just more familiar with equipment. Probably the biggest change I've had is running with yet another set of shoes. Different type again, completely. But I did the 50-mile run in these shoes when I'd only had them for a week. So that's,
if you're alright with that, then
that's pretty decent. I through all my training with them, which I probably had them 6 weeks or something now, I'd started developing a slight hot spot on the top of my foot, and I've just changed the lacing. And as part of what I tested today was lacing variation number 3. Not even the slightest bit of pain, completely gone. So,
use a little bit of Vaseline, or?
I purposely didn't, because I wanted to just test where the lacing gets me to. But yeah, exactly. There's additional things I can do. I think I've got the right sock shoe combination and others on backup.
Spare for Delmen.
Yeah.
You got your kit bag sorted for?
I've got my list written out as what's going in it.
You can get, a bag, a decent sized small bin liner. Yep.
Yeah. No, it's like I say. I think in this model of movement, mind, nutrition, for me, equipment's more about your mind than anything else. Because I've heard people say, "Oh, I couldn't do this race because the weather was bad and my jacket wasn't good enough." And then I spoke to somebody else who'd been in exactly the same race and said, the weather was all right in that race, wasn't it? And you think, it's not about the equipment, that's purely about the mindset.
Yeah.
You know, it's so yeah, hopefully, you know, I've got a bit of experience in mountains in bad weather, so should be all right, I think.
No, it doesn't look like the weather's going to be shocking. It just looks like it's going to be damp, patchy, which is, you know, it could change as well. You could be clear.
Yeah, heat is my fear.
I think you're in luck.
As you saw at Easter, I fall apart in the heat. As long as it doesn't get too hot. And again, I'm liking this idea of going through the night first, because hopefully I can get to Dalmain and not be knackered from the heat.
Well, you'll be arriving, it depends at your pace, probably 8-9 in the morning, I think.
Yeah.
Which is,
that's it, like, you know, before the heat kicks in.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking change a t-shirt there, so that as the heat kicks in, I've, you know, kind of put my, you know yourself, you get used to that is the t-shirt that's best in the heat, that particular one. So I'm going to put that one in my drop bag and put that on, because then I can leave on the one I've got on, if, you know, by then I'll know what the weather's doing. You know, and I usually try to minimise choices, because otherwise you can stand there and faff for an hour. But
yeah,
because again, actually, it's one of the things that I want to, something I picked up from Wouter. He's the guy who won the Spine Challenger last year, and he's had a good chat with him on a podcast. And one of the things he's really hot on is in and out of checkpoints as fast as possible. He has these written checklists for every checkpoint, and I'm definitely going to take a leaf out with that book. One of the things that I did very successfully this January was because there's the kind of not checkpoints, but like Mountain Rescue handing out cups of tea and stuff like that on the spine, and Keithley and Cravendale Tri Club as well had a kind of a food marquee in the middle of the night, which was fantastic. And I've got a lot better at going in, getting something and walking with it, because if you're going to eat something for 5 minutes and you're walking, you cover a lot more ground than if you're sitting still. And then if you then run slowly for 5 minutes, you've covered a whole bunch of ground, versus sitting down and being still. And so that's definitely one of the things that's in my mind, and having the plan as you come into the checkpoint. You know, what are you going in there for? What's the purpose of your visit in there? If your purpose is to eat, again, one of the things from Javid is if you're going to eat when you get into the checkpoint, have a little bit of something out your pack before you get in there to start your digestion. Slow yourself down a bit, start your digestion before you go in there. And if it was a longer race where you're going to sleep, again, slow down into the checkpoint where you're going to sleep and start getting yourself ready for sleep, start to transition into things. So I've got a few of those kinds of things that where I've been getting better, but there's still another level to push on. So it's time for me to put my feet where my mouth is.
Yeah, well, and good luck.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Really.
What time are you getting up there on the Friday?
I'll just leave here, I think, about 9, because just no point trying to get past Manchester earlier in the morning, is there?
Drive up, get the tent sorted.
Yeah, drive up, get the tent sorted,
registered.
Yeah, and just hopefully have an hour or two to
hopefully it's not too warm on the Friday. I don't know what the forecast for the Friday
is. About 21 during the day, which is reasonable. So that's quite nice, lying on the grass next to the tent kind of weather, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. If it's like today, though, the tents can get.
Yeah, well, I'll say on the grass next to the tent, hopefully in a bit of shade.
Yeah. I think they've got a massive marquee next to the school.
Yeah, I've seen a picture of it. It's up already. Yeah.
Which is quite cool inside, which is good.
But yeah, again, it's like all my food for during the day on Friday. Because it starts 6 o'clock Friday evening, I can stick with my regular fast and just eat around lunchtime on Friday, and basically just eat all afternoon and just kind of reduce the eating down a bit as I'm getting towards the race, so I'm ready to go. Yeah, your
my stomach making noise.
Yeah, so it's ready to eat now. Because I was kind of interesting when I did that the Calderdale Way as a training run. I started that fasted. I didn't eat anything before it. And it was fine.
I think, like you said, that excitement, that mental energy before a big race is going to be very different to a training run.
Yes.
And that mental energy you're burning,
yes,
your metabolism will be,
yeah,
you're burning a lot more. You just, and it's to the temptation not to drink too much as well. I need to keep drinking and then you're starting with a big stomach sloshing down of liquid as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And salt, especially if it's warm.
Yeah. So I've one of the nice things about being on a fat focused diet and knowing that I need some salt is pork scratchings.
Yeah, I love pork scratchings
from the farm shop. Their homemade pork scratchings are just amazing.
Yeah. Good fat, good salt. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, so obviously you wouldn't want to eat too many and have too much salt at the same time, but
I think one packet of pork scratchings will be alright.
I think so.
The amount you sweat.
Yep.
If it's warm.
That's it. I mean that's kind of my in race nutrition is pork scratchings, some Polish sausage, so they're both fatty and salty. Bag of mixed nuts, and what I tend to do is put salted peanuts in there. Everything else is unsalted, and some fruit in there.
Boiled eggs.
Yeah, a couple of boiled eggs. It depends how warm it's going to be as to what state they're going to be in. But boiled eggs, and then you might see across the room there some boxes of Primal Kitchen bars. So I've just been testing them in the last couple of weeks actually, which is I wouldn't usually try and change something so close to a race, but they're really good. They are very, very basic on their ingredients. They are just the creamy coloured box there is macadamia nuts, which is the fattiest nut, and dates and coconut. And that's all that's in there, just 3 ingredients that they've mixed up and formed into a bar, and it's like that's perfect. And then the other ones are just slightly fruitier, so I think pecans and acacia berries or something. I don't know. So at least I've got a choice of flavours kind of thing. And then the chia charge bars is kind of if I need some carbs, and I think that's all I'm planning to carry really, because there's stuff at the aid stations.
Yeah.
But I think again you can distract yourself and lose a lot of time looking at the selection and messing about.
Yeah, I think I've heard people complaining, saying, well, they didn't have this, they didn't have that, they didn't have that. It's like, it's a 100-mile race. If you're serious about it, carry your own stuff.
Exactly.
Get yourself organised.
Yeah, that's my plan. I carry everything I need, and then everything that's on offer is a bonus.
Yeah.
And it means that if I do get a weird kind of pickiness part way through, that bonus is there, which again is what happened on the spine, because I started off with a similar kind of food strategy on that, and as I say, kind of part way through I was just craving more carbs, and so when I went into the checkpoint and they've got chicken and rice or whatever, perfect, get that down here. It's just what I needed. A few sweets off the Tri Club and things like that, and off you go. It's it's good having those things on offer. But yeah, I don't rely on them. Go out there to do my own thing, which again means that compared to some of the guys right at the front, my pack will be a bit bigger, but not excessively so. The biggest chat on the group seems to be about the mug that people are carrying, because you need a solid mug for your soup or whatever, and I don't understand what all the fuss is about. I've got a 650ml titanium Alpkit mug. It weighs nothing. It's huge.
Yeah. So
unless you're trying to get a tiny pack,
you can get those melamine mugs. You can get all sorts that weigh bugger all, and you can get those little like silver, basically like a plastic cup. I use that if I just want to dip past a river or something like that and have a quick, or not, something fresh, anyway, I'll just chuck it on you. But yeah, people worry about the most ridiculous things.
They do.
Poles, not poles. Hockers, not hockers.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I've modified my poles. This is when you're getting really gear and nerdy. So I've got the I forgot what make they are, the Mountain King or something they're called.
Yeah,
the poles, and to when you extend them, it has like a string you pull inside and you fasten it, and then that string flies about, but then it has a bit of Velcro to kind of fasten it on. Sorry, I'm losing my picture off the telly. But that bit of Velcro catches on your clothes as you're running and starts undoing itself, and it's really annoying when it does that for a long time. And on training runs I've just taped it up, but I want to be able to put my poles away when I'm doing downhill sections, give my arms a rest, because my legs might be, I think, ready for 100 miles, but my arms aren't. So what I found is, my idea that I had was that in the kind of top, it's like a little hole, and if you could have something so you could just push that the pendulous plastic bit that's at the end into that hole, you just got a very, very light loop of string there. And I found some pieces of Lego that were just the right size, so I've super glued some Lego into the end and stick it in, and it works perfect. But yeah, it's just like I say, I think those things, they're just things that can kind of play on your mind and start to annoy you through a race.
I had a pole where the strings, the knot popped out and it went straight through and the poles fell apart, and I was like trying to thread it back together. And I just stuck it in my bag. I think about 20-30 miles later I kind of got it out and just managed to patiently get it through, but it was fine. It was fine.
Yeah, well, and on the Hardmore 60 one of my poles snapped. And again it was just I picked up all the pieces. I've still never it's a little bit snapped off the end. I've got the end piece, so I can cut it and kind of put that on, because they were adjustable length poles, but I've never got round to it. I bought
I've seen somebody using a tree, actually it might have been Gwyn, he had a big long stick in the middle of the desert when we were out doing that. I vaguely remember.
Yeah, I mean,
might have been Gwyn.
Yeah, I think for me, anything over 50 or 60 miles, I'd want poles available, even if they were in a drop bag to use later on.
Yeah. I didn't. The first 100 I did, I put them in my bag, and I kept telling myself, don't get them out until it gets hard, until like you think you really need them. Don't get them out unless you think you've got them. It's almost like mentally it was like a sign of weakness. So I didn't get them out until the top of, you come out of Tilberthwaite Quarry, about 102, 103 miles in. So I got them out at the top with about 1.5 miles, 2 miles to go, just the drop down because it's wet. And I just thought, that's all right. I've done it. I didn't need them, but I don't want to slip and break anything now. They're there. Yeah. If it helps, it helps. Yeah, it's good for your back.
I like them for hiking uphill, basically. Depending on the ground, because if you've got long grass, they're fairly useless because they're just forever getting knocked all over the place. But if you've got a decent surface, I do go uphill, like hiking uphill, more efficiently using them. Just an extra bit of thrust keeps me focused. But Howard Dracup, he's really good with his. He's got much better technique than me. There was a video clip of him from January Spine where he was running along and he was switching, because it was up and down, he was switching between running and walking, or running and hiking, with his poles the whole time, without ever losing any momentum in the transition. It's just like, man, that guy's practiced, but that's why he's just won the Beacon's Way 100.
Is that Brecon Beacon?
Yeah. That's. He's got a few more years under his belt of running than I have, so. But it's good. Right. Well, I think I've covered everything.
Just got to do it now.
Yeah, just got to go out there, find out what's going to go wrong.
Maybe nothing.
Might go out there
cruise it
and cruise it. Yeah, that'd be good.
And then go back the next year thinking, I've got it licked, and then it all goes wrong next year. that can happen.
Yeah.
You put so much emphasis on one, you think, right, I've got it, and then you go again, and you make all the mistakes that you.
I mean, there's a fair chance of me getting lost because I haven't recce'd any of it.
It's not that difficult navigation wise. There's a route book.
I'm going with 5 sets of navigation.
Yeah, you'd be fine.
I have my watch, my GPS, my phone, the road book, and the map. The map and compass. I know I can get around the whole thing with a map and compass. So.
Route book, the map, just so you kind of know where you are, and it's nice just to have a look around and think, oh, that's there. So you're looking around, and you're absorbed in the whole thing. You're absorbed in the lakes, and you're looking, thinking this whole thing is, it's just ace. And then the compass a bit occasionally. You probably shouldn't need it that much. I doubt you'll even need the watch and the other stuff. The route book's detailed. To
be honest, I in the Challenger in January, I had because in that you have to have a handheld GPS with you. It's a compulsory kit. But I didn't even switch it on at the start because I know the route so well. It was only when there's a section through some fields that you go through at like 3 a.m. or something.
Yeah.
And it was like misty and whatever.
Yeah, Langdale's I've got a habit of being that way.
It's that's the time to use it. So I'll have it there because that's the thing, that if the weather's really bad, you can use it. You can see exactly where you are. It's a one with buttons on, not a touch screen, so you can use it in all weathers. So it's there for backup. It's a bit of a heavy lump to carry for backup, but I've got it. I'd be a bit silly to leave it at home.
Yeah. Well, you never know when you're going to need it. I mean, there might be other people around, and it's a tricky bit, but you never knew it was tricky because there were just loads of other people around, and they knew where they were going, and you were just. It might be a fairly innocuous bit, and you just think, oh no, I don't know where I am because I've not really been concentrating.
Yes.
It's that. You won't know. I mean, I'll chat to you afterwards, and you'll be like, "Well, that bit was good. That bit was a bit fiddly through the woods, but near Ambleside, or that bit was tricky." And there are bits, but you'll find out. You work it out. That's part of it, though. Working it out as you go along.
Yeah, I mean, I've been finding, just because of few years' experience running on trails and following different events. There's a kind of a mindset of recognizing the right trail. I don't know whether you can just start to see that's a lot more trodden on more recently than what that is, and as soon as you get onto a bit of trail, you're looking and seeing, are there footprints from running shoes here? And if there aren't, you stop straight away and think, I'm on the wrong trail. If it's all boots and not running shoes, I'm on the wrong trail. And that's when I'll get a GPS or something out and check it and think, hold on, I've gone the wrong way. That's the kind of thing I'm often doing now, is you come to somewhere and you think, that looks right, I'll go that way. And as you start going, you think, what's on the ground? That's where some of the mountain rescue search training and man tracking starts to come in. You can recognise the sign and work out how long it is since the last person went through and stuff. But there's a few more people in this race than other races that I've done, so there'll probably be somebody to follow.
Yeah, I would have thought so. There'll be, certainly for the first,
it's like
15-20 miles. Yeah, that's
a lot of people.
It spreads out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But at night time, it's quite nice though. You get these little lines of lights going up the mountains, and you can hear bells as well. A couple of the checkpoints have got little jingly bells. I think it's chapel style, and it's quite, especially if you're hallucinating, which I do with lack of sleep. You start hearing bells, and if it's rainy a little bit, and your eyes are kind of a little bit like little bells. There's lights over there. There's noises. Yeah, it can be interesting. Well, good luck.
That's the fun stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's good. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right. Well, let's wrap it up there, because I've said it all. Like I say, got to go and do it now. So thank you very much for coming along and
just
helping me through this chat, and and for all the advice you've been giving me over the past months while we've been talking about this race.
You're welcome. Yeah, I hope it's useful.
Yeah. Cheers.